So, have you ever fallen a little short on a goal? And instead of dealing with it head on, you just quietly decide you'll start again later? Maybe you don't announce it, but you just think to yourself, I'll start again on Monday, or I'll start again next month. And before you know it, your goal has quietly died. Well, I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be that way. And that is what we're diving into today. Hey, friend, welcome to the show. So, today is part 6 of our Goal Setting That Sticks series, the final part to the series. So, really quick, if you are new to the show and you have landed here first, please don't start here. If you want to do goal setting in a whole new way that is going to get you to follow through for the whole year, go back and start with episode 10. And make sure you listen to all 6 parts in order. They all build on each other, and every single one matters. Because let's be honest, most of us are pretty good at setting goals. It's the follow through that tends to fall apart sometimes. But this whole process, this whole 6-part series, is all about helping you stick with your goals throughout the year so you can look back and say, wow, I actually did what I said I was going to do. All right, my dear. So last week, we chose your quarter 1 goals. Just 1 or 2, that's it. Then you chose up to 3 milestones for each of those goals. We talked about putting systems in place to support you and help you do the milestones. Maybe you set some alarms on your phone. Maybe you got an accountability buddy. Maybe you stacked some habits. Maybe you joined the Better with Every Book Club. Those systems are there to help hold you accountable week to week. You also chose your minimum baseline and you chose your reset mantra. That phrase that you can come back to when it feels like things are falling apart so that you keep moving forward instead of quitting. So today's episode is all about setting yourself up for success quarter after quarter. And today's episode is going to be super short because the truth is you have already done all of the hard work, at least all of the hard planning part of the work. So today is just about how you keep going. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is to choose a weekly check-in day. This is one day every single week where you are going to sit down with you and review how things are going. Now, I recommend keeping it the same day and time every week so that it really becomes a ritual for you. This is a weekly meeting with yourself, but I want you to treat it as important as you would an appointment with the Pope. Now, I'm not even Catholic, but if I had an appointment with the Pope, you better believe I'm going to show up for that, right? Non-negotiable. If you have an accountability buddy, you could set this up with them as well, and you could do your weekly check-ins together. Or if you have a morning routine, plug it into that. That's what I'm doing. Or for you, maybe it's part of your evening routine, or it's on the weekend. There is no right or wrong here. You just need to pick a day and a time that actually works for your real life. Now, inside the planner, I gave you a list of weekly check-in questions. This is your weekly snapshot. Now, I'm not going to read all of them to you because you have them in the planner, but these are questions like what worked well, what didn't? Did I follow through on my minimum baselines? What needs adjusting so next week feels doable? Or what support or structure would make next week easier? Now, this step really matters because when we initially set our goals and milestones, sometimes we do it with a slightly idealized version of what our life actually looks like, what our days actually look like, right? And then when real life shows up, we realize that pieces of it might not fit quite as well as we thought it would. And that doesn't mean that your goal was wrong, but it might mean that your support or your structure need a little tweaking, and that's okay. As long as you are still moving toward your goal, it is absolutely fine to make small adjustments along the way. We're not quitting, we're not dropping the ball. We are just staying engaged. So you are also going to have quarterly and monthly check-ins with yourself. So your weekly check-ins kind of keep you present. Your monthly and your quarterly check-ins are what are going to keep you moving forward. And you can do this 2 ways. You can schedule these completely separate from your weekly check-ins if you'd like, or just use your weekly check-in time. That's what I'm doing. So let's say your weekly check-in time is every Friday morning. Once a month, that Friday morning becomes my monthly check-in. Once a quarter, that becomes my quarterly review. And I have different questions for those in the planner as well. These are a little bit bigger picture, right? And then you just keep going. But I want you to actually put these in your calendar. As soon as you decide what day and time you're going to do these, go put them in the calendar for the rest of the year. And sure, there may be weeks where you have to adjust the time. But honestly, these check-ins aren't going to typically take you that long, so you're probably going to be able to fit them in most of the time. Now, let's talk for a minute about what happens when we skip our weekly check-in or monthly or quarterly. Usually, if someone skips a weekly check-in, it's because it wasn't a great week. Look, I have been guilty of this in the past, for sure. Maybe you didn't hit your milestones last week. Maybe you didn't even hit your minimum baseline. And instead of facing yourself, you just avoid it. But here is the thing you have to remember. Messing up does not lead to a failed year. Quitting does. Skipping your check-ins is like slashing the other 3 tires when you walk out and you got 1 flat. Or it's like eating your Cheeto Puffs on a Tuesday and saying, well, I guess I'll just throw in the towel and start again on Monday. And then you just eat crap for a whole week. How many of us have said that? I know I have said it more times than I can count. But this is not the year we do that. That is one of the reasons we chose our theme for the year. That North Star, that identity reminder of who you are becoming, what kind of woman you want to be, how you want to show up. So here's another way of thinking about it. Have you ever been driving somewhere and you missed your exit? Of course you have. We all have. Look, I use my map on my phone and I still miss exits sometimes. But when that happens, I don't just keep driving down the wrong road and pretend like it didn't happen. That's not going to get me where I want to go, right? I recalibrate. I look to see, where am I? I course correct, and then I keep going towards my destination. And I don't shame myself for missing the exit, right? What good would that do? That is what these check-ins are all about. They're just to see, are you still on that blue line? Are you still on the right path? Or do we need to recalibrate? Do we need to get back on the highway? And here's another reason that your weekly check-in is so important, especially when you've had a rough week. When you do that check-in, when you don't want to, you are building evidence for yourself. You are proving to yourself that even if you mess up, you don't quit. Sure, mistakes happen. Have you ever made another mistake in your life before? Of course. Have you ever had a single argument with your spouse? I certainly have. I've had lots of arguments with him. But you don't have one argument and then get divorced, right? We're still married, 27 years and counting. When you show up for that check-in, even when everything feels messy, even when you're feeling imperfect, and by the way, we are all imperfect, you are putting evidence in your bank that says, I keep going. And 6 weeks into this or 8 weeks into this, you will be so proud of yourself. Not for doing everything right, but because the woman that does her weekly check-ins is the kind of woman who builds the life of her dreams because she doesn't quit. She doesn't throw in the towel. And that is identity level change. And your weekly check-ins are also an appointment with future you. Remember her? Remember how fabulous she is? And present you keeps doing her a favor when you show up for them. And when things are feeling off, come back to your reset mantra. That is exactly what it's for. Mine is, what would future me do next? Not what would future me do perfectly, just what is the next right step? So this week, I want you to choose a day and time for your check-ins. Put them on your calendar and treat them as a non-negotiable. That's it. Now, I do want to just say that you have done a lot of work in this series. You should be really proud of yourself because you dug deep. You got really honest with yourself. You spent time thinking about what you want and intentionally mapping it out. And that is not easy. So I want you to take a minute and just flip back through the pages, flip back through your notes and just look at everything. You have already come quite a bit farther than you realize. And you probably already feel like a slightly different version of yourself than when you started this process on day 1. So just imagine how you're going to feel a year from now. You are designing the life you want, one intentional step at a time. And I am so excited for you. All right, y'all. That is all I've got for today. Go be fabulous. Make sure you take my free Shift Happens quiz to find out what you're really craving next in midlife. Or if you think you might be ready to dive into one-on-one coaching with me, book a free clarity call. You'll find both links right below the video.